honor. You need a healthy level of ego. You need all of these things. We're taking it all from boys, and what are we giving them instead? Video games, porn, weed. And what do you expect of these people? What do you expect of these shit versions of men besides trash output? You're going to get garbage all across the spectrum. Either they're going to do nothing or they're going to do something bad. They're certainly not going to do anything good when they don't try for anything in their lives. How are they going to do something good? The scary thing about all of this is that there still are two teams in the world. And there is a side of the world where they don't accept this crap. How long is America going to compete globally when you have countries like China and Russia and these other countries where they don't do this? I don't know if you saw, they did that survey to kids of what they want to be when they grow up. Did you ever see that? Yeah, it was crazy. Every American kid wanted to be a YouTuber. Yeah. Every Chinese kid wanted to be an engineer or an astronaut. Yeah. Who owns the future? Who owns the future? We're in so much trouble. We're in so much trouble as a society, and what are we arguing over? It's insane.
And what do they show you on TikTok, though?
Absolutely, exactly.
But let's stay on this. You asked a very important question. Let's go back to it. We had the same amount of guns, 1950 per capita. Brandon, can you look at that per capita, how many guns we had in 1950 versus today? Yeah. But it's relatively the same. Gun laws haven't changed dramatically from 1950 till today. What's changed from then to today? We took out God out of school. Prozac was invented in 1987. Yep. The law to legalize advertising drugs, big pharma, in America was 1985. It's only 2 countries in the world that can advertise, us and New Zealand.
Crazy.
So you got God, you got Prozac, you got big pharma advertising, you got the LGBTQ movement that's taking place. You got all of that taking place to where we are today. So when you're talking about guns, what has changed? It's not the guns that's changed. Society has changed. Standards have changed.
Completely.
So how do you fix that? So if that is the biggest problem you're selling, number one, here's a problem. Let me sell you why this is the problem. Okay, the people are like, you're right, I'm buying it. Give us a solution. What's the solution?
Yeah, I think the solution comes back down to family values, and that's a very difficult question to answer because it's across the entire spectrum, right? I do feel like it's almost a race to the bottom for men and women now in the modern society. I don't think women are being very good women. I don't think men are being very good men. And I think both of that is accelerating against each other, and it's a race to the bottom.
How do you fix that?
It's difficult. It's hard. And I still think one of the easiest ways to do that is God. I think if you bring back some degree of morality and some degree of standard to both sexes, I think things will start to get better. I can tell you right now, they talk about why does men not want to get married anymore. Men don't want to get married anymore. They come up with all these elaborate reasons. The main reason men don't want to get married anymore is because their girlfriend was with me for free. So why are they going to marry her? That's the bottom line of it. Why would you, a white dress means virgin. Marry who? A girl from the club who your friends have been with? Do you want to marry her? Like when you remove all of the morality from life, you just end up in a scenario where the only possible logical move is to act without morals. Game theory, right? We sit there and we analyze things logically. If you're going to be, if all the women you meet are immoral, how are you going to act? Well, you act morally, you get wrecked. So how do you act? Immorally. It's a race to the bottom. We have to fix society as a whole, and it comes down to even the most basic things like female promiscuity, the most basic things like men sticking up for their last name, the most basic things like men having to be too honorable and too proud to be out of shape or be poor or not take care of a woman. I'm not just talking about women, I'm talking about men. Any woman who's with me, her life is fixed. That is my job. I'm Andrew Tate. I would be embarrassed to have a girl say, I'm Andrew Tate's girlfriend and have to work a job unless she wanted to. She can do anything she wants. She's my chick. You can have anything. You run the world now. You're with the top G. Anything you want is mine. I'll take care of you in every single way, but you must take care of me. I take care of you financially and physically. You must protect me spiritually. You must do your job. It's a race to the bottom on both sides. And when you have two genders racing to the bottom and then a child is born, what do we expect from this child? Who's raising the child? The school, the TV, the internet? You trust these people? Look what they're injecting into them. So another thing that's very interesting. You talk about the 1950s, another thing that was different. In the 1950s, parents raised their kids. Who raises kids nowadays? School, internet, Twitch. How much time do you spend talking to your child compared to the programming they get from the Matrix? You're losing in terms of pure minutes. You're losing. You can't even control what your child sees in school anymore. You don't even know. And when you find out they do what they did in California, they're like, what? Most people don't even know this. You have children 15 years old, I've seen it on YouTube, arguing with their own parents, disagreeing with their own parents. The whole point of having children is to instill your values in them. I want my sons to be Emery Andrew Tate. They must think and act and be like me. And for someone, I've had people say to me, what if they're not? If they're not, they're not. That's fine. But the whole point of me having them was my lineage. That's the whole point of me suffering to raise them was my lineage. Why would I raise them to be anything other than what I believe I should be and they should be? That's the whole point of it, and I'm proud of that. I'm not going to sit and apologize for wanting my sons to be Tates. I'm not going to apologize for it. I don't care what the school wants them to believe. They believe what I want them to believe because they are mine. But all of that's gone. So then we also talk about what's different between the 1950s and today. These kids are being raised by people who aren't their parents, and whoever's raising them clearly ain't teaching them anything good. It's teaching them, if you feel, act how you feel. You can't tell men that. It's dangerous. You can't tell men to act how they feel. You can't tell men to not have emotional control. You can't tell men to cry anytime they want. Because men don't just cry sad, they cry angry. They cry very angry. You don't want that. You have to teach them stoicism. You have to teach them all of these things. And it's all gone.
So, okay, so let's stay on this. This is actually a very interesting topic we're in, from 1950s till today. So you're saying, if somebody is a Tate, if somebody is my wife, if somebody is my son, you're going to be doing this. I'm not going to let a teacher X, Y, Z. Okay. Well, 85, 90% of America doesn't have the money to be able to
Correct.
put them in a private school.
Correct.
Where right now is June. If you go on YouTube or Twitter and look at Pride Month, everywhere kids are coming to school. Parents, teachers got these pride stuff going on all over the place. Parents are like, look, I'd love to put them in a private school, but even some private schools are doing it right now. In Florida, there is a private school. It's known, one of the best private schools out there. You know which one I'm talking about? I won't mention it. Starts with the letter P. People should know what it is, but they all know what I'm talking about. We have a party at our house, okay? And baseball. My son, so he's got a baseball. All the players are their parents. I'm talking to the parents. So, hey, meet one of the girls. So, what school do you go to? Oh, well, I was going to such and such school, but now I'm going to such and such school. Oh, really? Tell me why. The dad's like, yeah, it's just, reasons. He gets uncomfortable. Yeah. I said, no, really, tell me why. I'm curious. Well, I don't really want to get into that. I said, are you uncomfortable because it's political reasons? Well, yes. I said, well, let's just say you're safe to say it here. Yeah. He says, am I fully safe? I said, what do I need to tell you for you to know you're fully safe? You're fully safe with us because you know my position. Yeah. He says, fair. He says, we took him out because they started asking my daughter to do X, Y, Z with pride, to write on this. And she wrote a letter, a paper that was opposing the opinion, and she failed the class because her opinion didn't match whatever they were saying, and boom. Now, so I said, what's going on with that private school? That school's $50,000 a year per kid, the one that's grooming.
$50,000
a year per kid. Yep. There's an exodus from this school to go to other schools. So one, some parents don't have the option, Andrew, to say, you and I are not worried about it. I'm not worried about it, but the people I'm leading, they're worried about it.
Absolutely.
How do you fix it if you're that person without the resources you got?
And that's another thing that's difficult, because I have two answers to this question. I have the arrogant answer, not the answer that I believe is helpful.
I know the arrogant one. We'll give both of them.
I'll give both. The one I actually believe is helpful. This is where I think things like we discussed earlier, like the Klan comes into effect, right? Imagine you had 18 kids from 6 or 7 groups of parents, and everyone's living together. The family unit, the energy and the ethos and the merits of that particular clan is going to be so much stronger and difficult for the matrix to penetrate and break. Their best friends are the people they live with. The kids live with the other kids who believe the same as them. The parents all agree. When you're a clan, you're far more difficult to attack and assault. So I would say the first thing I would do if I was a parent of normal income, I would try and find other parents who agree with me and try and find other people who are ideologically sound. And I'd make sure that our children are friends and they spend the most time with each other. And I would try for us all to go on holidays together. And I would also put in conscious effort to try and deprogram. I don't think many parents say to their kids, what did you learn today? I'd be doing that not to check on the kid. I'd be doing the check on the school.
But let me challenge you what's going on. Sure. So let's role play. Go ahead. Ask me the question.
What did you learn at school today?
So today we learned that, Dylan Mulvaney had the courage to stand up for her beliefs, and she's a hero because she's out there and she's helping a lot of other people that are going through challenging times be able to stand up for themselves.
Okay.
What are you going to tell me?
I would say, why do you think they want you to believe that?
What do you mean that?
Why do you think they want you to believe that? They've told you something.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's true. What they've done is lie to you. Why do they want you to believe that?
Perfect. So say you now convince me I'm your son. Yeah. Great. I go to school tomorrow. Yeah. Ready?
Correct.
Now I'm in school.
Correct.
Hey, Miss Jones says, hey, Patrick, so tell me, so what did you think about this as this, you have to write this paper? Well, let me tell you, last night I was having a conversation with my dad, and my dad told me, why do you want me to believe that? Then comes the phone call, And then now you're cornered as a parent, and now what do you say to the school? Say I'm the school, role play.
Correct. And I can't role play it by myself. It's difficult. It's difficult. And this is the exact point why you need a clan, you need a network, you need other parents. If I was a parent and my child was going to public school, I'd be extremely interested in finding other parents whose kids were going to that public school. Yeah, you have the PTA meetings, etc., but there has to be a degree of strength in numbers. It's hard. You can say homeschooling, that's the cop-out. But the other answer, the more arrogant answer to this, is actually an answer I gave after the subway incident. You know, in New York with the subway where they choked the guy and he died.
Yep.
I get asked all the time, Andrew, what would you have done in that scenario? It's a very difficult scenario. I mean, we can argue whether he choked him too long, whether he was trying to protect people. There's a bunch of arguments. But it's very unfortunate. This goes back to what I was saying earlier. You can no longer just be the average man, the average citizen. I insulate myself from so many problems with money. I know this is a terrible thing to say and people aren't going to like hearing it, but it's true. I never have to worry about some garbage on the subway. I never have to worry about, do I stand up and defend this woman or allow her to get attacked because they're going to put me in jail? I never have to worry about some fight on a plane because the ticket was $40. I never have to worry about my kid going to learn something they don't want to learn. I don't have to worry about any of this because money protects me, right? So when I say this, like if I have a girl and she's saying, all you do is work, you need to be a dad too. I'm being a dad by being rich. That's me being a dad. That's how I protect you all. I'll work 18 hours a day every single day. That's me being a dad more than almost anything, because that's how I protect you and everybody else from all this insanity. It's the only way to do it, because you need to be flexible.
We're fully on the same page. I'm on the same page as you. I also want to make the money, so I get to pick and choose.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is a message, because the reality is not everybody is going to go out there and make the
Correct.
10 a month or
Correct.
whatever you make. It's just not going to happen.
Correct.
The market's not set up that way.
Correct.
Quite frankly, not everybody brings that kind of value to the market.
Correct.
To garner that kind of pay. You know that, I know that.
Correct.
Okay, how can you and I help the audience that is sitting there, great citizens,
Yep.
net positive.
Yep.
They take their kids to church on Sundays.
Yep.
They work their butts off. They're doing their best to keep their marriage together as hard as it is.
Yep.
They're paying the bills for the kids. They're making 80 grand, 120 household income.
Yep.
They can't talk like you and I.
You're right.
What do they do?
You're right.
Let's give them the solution.
You're right. So if I was them, here's what I would do. I would make sure that my family had core parameters and core beliefs that we believed in, and I would fact check everything my child was told against those core parameters and core beliefs. So let's say one of our core parameters and core beliefs was hard work. We believed in hard work and dedication. When they came home and told me something about body shaming or the fact that models can change, I'd say, does that agree with the beliefs and the merits that this family has decided we're going to operate under? Yes or no? I would have a framework, I would have a gate which ideas have to penetrate through. Every idea has to be fact checked against a gate, a parameters of set values that was stuck to my last name. Honor, courage, discipline, hard work, whatever those parameters are. And I'd say to my child every day, what did you learn in school? I'd listen to it and I'd say, does that align with our value on this? And also, I'd make this very clear, because this was done to me as a child. I'd make it very clear to my children that they're exceptional. I think every single person is exceptional for different reasons. We talk about normal children, normal families. That doesn't mean they're not an exceptional individual. They can still be an exceptional person.
Totally.
Who knows what they might become?
Sure.
I'd say you're an exceptional. You don't believe what everyone else in that school is told to believe just because it is said. You're an exceptional person, and we have a framework we operate under because your last name is X, and our framework is this. Does that align with hard work and dedication? No, it doesn't. Why are they trying to tell you that? Because they're trying to attack the framework which you need to be successful. My father said to me when I was young, my father had many quotes, and I use them all the time, but one of my favorites was, I allow manipulation to find out where my enemy wants me to go, and then I use my mind to break the trap and punish the perpetrators. That's the exact line I will tell my child. I'll say, they've attempted to manipulate you. We've allowed it. I allowed you to go to school and listen to this. Why were they trying to manipulate you? Where do they want you to go? They want to take you away from discipline. Yeah. They want to take you away from hard work. Now we're going to use our minds to break the trap. We now know what they want. My father explained this saying to me, and he said why it was so important, and it's true. If you don't allow them to manipulate you at all, you don't know where they want you to end up. You might get tricked another way. You might take another road to the same destination. Mm-hmm. You allow the manipulation. Tell me what you want me to believe. Tell me what you want me to understand. Allow it to manipulate me all the way to the end. I see the end goal. Yep. This is what you want. No. And this is what I would teach my children. Explain. Your time in school is going to teach you some very important things that you need to know. And they're also attempting to psyop you and trick you and poison your mind. And we are going to discuss daily, built within our family framework, within the code of our last name, to see which are true and which are lies. It takes work, like everything else on earth. It takes work. And I know it's hard. Parents are out there, they're working, they haven't got time. Yeah. Their kids are on the internet. It's difficult. But you have to put the work in, because you are almost fighting an enemy for the minds of your children now.
You know what I think? You know what I think is that's great, very good feedback. But so I lived in Iran, and in Iran, you'd go out there and you'd say, so hey, listen, people are asking you about religion, don't talk about it. Are we Christians? I don't know. Talk to my mom and dad. You don't need to answer the question, right? Because there's that fear. So parents are teaching kids to not talk about their values and principles. The element that parents fear what the school's gonna say to them and not give the kids the best grades, because imagine you got a 10th grader or even a senior. If you really say what you believe in, that teacher gives you a C, you don't get the A to get the 4.3 GPA to get the scholarship because you can't afford it. You have to be like constantly like this. So parents are telling their kids, look, whatever I'm telling you, don't tell them. I think it's bigger than that. I think a part of it is this is the first time we had stats, and I don't know how long this was, where kids graduating high school are not valuing a four-year college as much as they did before, okay? That is a threat to the establishment because they can't be a control, right? Number two is there is an element, when I'm watching this video with these parents yesterday in Glendale, and this is where I grew up, this is my street. I grew up Broadway and Verdugo, right next to that post office. I'm 200 yards away from the high school is where I grew up, and I lived on Doran for a couple of years before I went to Wilson Junior High School. And I'm seeing these parents upset, like, how is this? This is common sense. Leave these kids alone. I think there's got to be an element of those parents coming together in a form of a strike, I believe, to say, if you want the tax-funded money that's being given to your school district, hey, we're not coming. We're going to decide to do schooling together, and we're going to use this place or this facility and that facility, because they have to feel the pain. They cannot do that to the kids. So my only messaging with what you're saying right now, number one rule is what? Go start a part-time income, make an additional $3,000 a month so you can send them to the private school that they're teaching right values. Okay, that's number one. Two, I can't afford to do that. Three, this is the other option that you got.
And you're right, and Trump said it in his book, The Art of the Deal. He said, if you're not prepared to walk away, you can't negotiate. And that's the same with absolutely everything. If there's never a bottom line in which you say enough, then you can't negotiate. You have no negotiating position. We talk about this when it comes to children in schools, but this is also very applicable for relationships. I've had girls who say to me, you know what, I was watching TV and they were saying that, I don't know, X, Y, Z. And I would say, listen, I take care of you. I love you very much. I'm going to make sure you have everything you've ever wanted. I'm going to make sure you're physically safe. That's why you're not going to go walking home alone drunk. It's not because I'm a misogynist. It's not because I dislike you. It's not because I'm controlling. It's not because I'm manipulative. It's because it's for your safety, and your safety to a degree is my responsibility. But I saw on the news X, Y, Z. If you believe the news over me, then go find another man. You have to be prepared to walk away, right? This is the bottom line of it. This is what I personally believe. These are my values.
100% with you.
These are my values. And this is what I personally believe. If she says, well, no, I'm not listening to you, and I stay with her anyway, well, then it's over, isn't it? And then she's going to do whatever she wants.
But not everybody can do that because you've earned the right.
Of course.
The proposition you're offering so high that they have to sit there and say, I can't lose this guy.
Completely. And this is where we go back to the original point about how difficult it is to be the average man now. It's becoming more and more difficult. We're in a position now where you have a racetrack and you have Ferraris and Nissans. And yeah, we can discuss how the Nissan might beat the Ferrari, but the truth is, it's hard. It's very, very hard. If I was a man and I was starting all over again, I would do the same things I did. I would wake up and say, okay, this game is extremely difficult. My best chance is to level up my character to a point where the game becomes easy. Because life does become easy at a certain point. Yes, now I'm in a very unique situation. But before this situation, I had only 3 problems in my life. My health, which I take care of, my woman, who I take care of, and money. That was it. If I made enough money, I had no other problems. If you're broke, you have lots of small problems. The car doesn't start, the school fees are coming up, whatever. We need new clothes for the kids. I had one problem to fix. If I fix my one issue, everything else is fixed. You get to a point in life where someone goes, oh, we've got an issue. How much? Just tell me the number. I don't even want to know the ins and outs. Just do the transfer, make it go away. So, yeah, as a man, I think you have that imperative to understand that the video game of life as a man is exceptionally difficult, and especially as you get older, as you progress with the levels, it gets harder. It's getting harder and harder. You need to level up your character. This is what amazes me when men go, I struggle with motivation. How can you struggle with motivation in the modern world? Are you asking to just lose? Are you asking to just be erased from humanity?
Yep.
Are you asking to be invisible? How can you be an 18-year-old man and say, I don't have the motivation to train as hard as possible and get as rich as possible? You are born to lose if you don't have motivation at 18. In the modern world, as competitive as it is, all those girls, those 18-year-old girls you go to school with, are talking to some 28-year-old man with a yacht somehow. And you're sitting there lonely and you don't have motivation? You must be out of your mind. The only way to win this game is to become as powerful as possible. It's difficult and it's getting harder and harder. And this is why I teach the things I teach to men. You can't just be Joe Schmo and win anymore. Those days are over. You have to be something else.
The challenge those young men have, though, it's sometimes not even their fault. Why? Single mother.
Yep.
Raised by a single mother.
Yep.
They've been indoctrinated and they heard the future is female a million times. Yep. Next thing you know, they're 18. They kind of have this victim mentality. Yep. It's almost not even their fault some of these times.
Oh, completely.
We're all in our late 30s, early 40s. We've grown up. I played football in school. He's an athlete, bodybuilder. Obviously, you're a kickboxing champion. We've had coaches. We've had people kick our ass. We didn't grow up with participation trophies. We've had our asses kicked. We've gone through shit, now we are the shit. A lot of these young guys playing video games, addicted to porn, they grow up with a phone in their hand, raised by women. They weren't raised how we were raised. How do you teach those kids, though?
Well, that's exactly what they don't want me doing. That's why they're trying to put me in jail. Because I managed to become, I'm not for a second bragging, but the size of the movement that I created, I turned up in Slovenia. I don't know if you've ever seen that video with the Bugatti where everyone's going, top G. That's the capital of Slovenia. I can't even pronounce it. Ljubljana or something. I've never been there before. Slovenia, where even is it? Like, I can barely find it on a map. I know roughly where it is.
If you want a guaranteed way to get in touch with me, maybe you have a business idea, maybe you want some fashion tips, maybe you just want to connect, you could find me on Minect.
This is what I was saying earlier on about how complicated masculinity is, but I broke it down to those 3 basic tenets because even a teenage boy can understand if you get enough money and enough power and enough powerful friends and enough sexual access that you're going to be able to build yourself to a man of, I can cry now. I've qualified to cry. When you're an 18-year-old boy, you shouldn't be crying. You should be focused and you should be an animal and you should be training, you should be working hard, and you should be listening, you should be going to coaching. I'm now at a level where I'm allowed to cry. I understand all the different elements of being a man. I understand the tapestry of masculinity fully. I can cry if I decide to. I've qualified for that. But before you get to that point, you have to go through all the hard shit. And the hard shit I've broken down to the 3 basics. And I think that's why they're coming to attack me so heavily. Genuinely because of what you just said. I'm telling kids things, and especially people often ask me, especially Matrix Media, they say, why did you get so big? Because I'm telling the truth. I'm telling the truth, which every man knows is intrinsically true in his heart, because God has instilled him with a basic degree of morality of right and wrong. I'm saying things to a 17-year-old boy, and he's going, he makes sense. I get it. Everything I was told so far just didn't quite click, but this does. And that's what they're so scared of. And I agree with you. You're completely right. And this goes back to, once again, we were saying about last names, family values. The number of times I was told I couldn't do something because of my last name, I think that was my whole childhood. My whole childhood is, well, you're a Tate. Dad, I got an A. Of course, you're a Tate. It was just like, duh. Of course you got an A. But what else are you going to get, a B? What, are you a dummy? That's who I was my whole life. I had standards exacted on me. And I've even heard like psychologists, I have a big problem with psychologists. I don't like them as a whole. I'll tell you some of my scenarios. I've had conversations with psychologists. There's a couple good ones, but there's a lot of them who I don't like. And their ideas, you raise children, don't put standards on, don't put pressure on them. How are they going to perform without pressure? Do you have pressure to perform in your business? Because I certainly do. I certainly do.
Pressure makes diamonds.
You think I didn't have pressure to perform when I sat down with the BBC and they tried to set me up? You think I didn't realize instantly? Okay, war. She's ready. You think there's no pressure? You think there's no pressure when they try and stab you to death? There's no pressure in life. You're going to raise a child and say, give him no pressure, give him no standards, so he can just be a kid. And what's he going to mold into? Absolutely and utterly not. Life is pressure, especially as a man. You need to have these exacting standards. That's how it is. My whole life was a pressure to perform to my last name. That's all it's ever been. I don't know how anyone's raised any other way. So yeah, it's crazy. It's a very difficult problem to fix. I agree with you. It's a very difficult problem to fix. But I think it starts with baseline things. And this is also why I feel like I have such a duty to act. I'll give you an example. If I could lie right now for $10 million and nobody would find out, nobody, I still couldn't do it because God would know and he'd punish me sooner or later. I really, truly believe that I would pay the price for that lie. I truly believe it. I think if you're a man and you're growing up and you're saying, How do I act? What do I do in this scenario? What would God want you to do? Tell the truth. You'd be amazed how far just telling the truth will get you. In any situation, I can give you benign situations that don't even matter. Your girlfriend caught you. Oh, and no, and I barely know her. Just say, yes, sorry. I love you. I'd love to stay together. Well, you did this. Sorry. I'm leaving. Okay, goodbye. Next day she's back. You just tell the truth. It could have gone on for weeks. She could have kept spying. She could have called the girl. All this drama. Just sometimes in life, you just man up and tell the truth. That's why in my current scenario, when I was saying earlier,
I think that's the only way you're free, by the way.
Completely.
Only way you're free.
Truth shall set you free.
It shall set you free. When I was saying earlier, the incompetence of my enemies is scaring me, and I don't know exactly what to do. All I can do is just tell the truth all the time. I'm going to tell the truth all the time. I'm going to say what I mean and mean what I say, and I'm going to tell the truth, and that's who I'm going to be. That's what I think is the best thing for me to do in the current scenario. But we're not even instilling that in children anymore. We're not even telling children how important it is to not lie.
Well, but that's also part of what you're talking about. I want to show you the stat because a guy sent it to me, and then we'll put this for the audience to see as well. Percentage of gun ownership from 1972 till today. Same thing.
Exactly the same.
If you look at the numbers, pretty much the same thing. So what's been the biggest difference is a lot of these things that we just talked about. By the way, that question you asked from 1950 till today, the candidate that's talking about this, again, I went back to politics, RFK is talking about this.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very important thing to talk about because it's making people go research and see for themselves and to ask the question, what really did change?
Completely.
We've had this all the time.
Completely.
What became legal? Why
Completely.
are we adding all these pharmaceuticals to, kiss the Tate?
Yeah.
What else would it be outside of that? So that was the foundation, which I agree with you. Household values, principles, kids, men, raising them better.
Yeah.
What else would you see as a challenge from an outside? And then I got part two of the question for you.
Yeah, it's
Anything else where you say, XYZ would also, by the way, I love the way you say Nissan and status. I just love the way you pronounce those two words, man. For a second you said Nissan, I'm like, what is Nissan? And then I realized what you're talking about.
Well, I remember when I was young, other people's parents would tell me off. Do you remember that? Did you ever get that when you were young?
Of course.
Other people's parents would come up and you better not. Random adults would just tell me off. I was scared of every grown-up. Every grown-up had a degree of authority. Just random adults. We can't do that anymore. There was just a degree of community that's certainly not really lost. And asking me how to bring it back is difficult. It's very hard. And that's one of the reasons why I've become so religious recently, because I think that God is definitely part of that. And that's also the reason I want to live in the clan I live in. That's why it is. My brother can tell my kids off, no problem. If I came home and Tristan's like, I had to scream it all, I'd be like, good. I trust him in his judgment. Good. Scream at them then. Good. They're children. Also, sometimes, you know what? Kids need to be yelled at sometimes. Why not yell at them? What are they going to do? Life's hard. Life's hard. The way we pander and baby children, especially, is insane. I was talking about this the other day. I was talking about how I have a pet peeve, and one of my pet peeves is painkillers. And I was being typical me, and I was going over the top. But I was saying, I was discussing with this guy. This guy said, have you got any aspirin? I said, there's no aspirin in my house. And he said, why? I said, brother, you are not facing 1% of the life difficulties I am facing. Think about it. No government's trying to lock you up. The Matrix isn't after you. They're not trying to frame you. Nobody wants you dead. When God finally gives you a tiny headache to give you something to show you're half a man, a little bit of resilience, you pussy out and take an aspirin. Can't you just have a headache? Just have a headache. And not only just have a headache and don't mention it, because I don't care. So don't even talk about it. Nobody needs to know. Just have a headache and be quiet.
I have a headache, Twitter.
Yeah. What do you want? Do you want therapy? You want sympathy? Nobody cares you have a headache. Shut up. It kind of goes back into my original conversation when I was saying I don't like psychotherapists and all their garbage, because they're constantly, I don't believe in, I've had conversations with therapists a few times, and my biggest detractors and enemies say, you need to talk to a therapist. The last conversation I had with a therapist didn't go very well. I said I didn't believe in most of their field and that it was garbage. And she said, why? And I said, because there are some boys who don't drink alcohol because their dad was an alcoholic, and there are some boys who are alcoholics because their dad was an alcoholic. You have the same scenario and different outcomes. So I don't believe in it. And she said, well, no, it's not an exact science, but we have generalized rules that we can follow that lead to patterns of behavior. I said, but I'm not a generalized person. I'm an exceptional person. So everything you've learned and everyone you've ever spoken to and everything in your books does not apply to me because I am exceptional and I'm smarter than you and I've done things you could never do and I'm a world champion athlete and I'm richer than you'll ever be. So nothing you know can possibly apply to my mindset. So why are we sitting here talking?
What was the reaction?
She just wrote things down on a piece of paper. Probably called me an arrogant piece of shit. Probably said don't like this guy.
Complete narcissist.